Welcome to this module on basic charting. At the completion of this module, you should have a basic understanding of how to create a bar chart, pie graph, a pivot table, a line chart, and a mapping or a spatial chart. Those are the most frequently used charts within Tableau. So we're going to start by opening up Tableau 2018.1. That's the program that we'll be using for the duration of this curriculum. We want to connect to sample Superstore data. So we're going to connect to a file, connect to Microsoft Excel, and go to the Tableau repository for sample Superstore. Select Open. And in this view, we've actually went over the Tableau interface in a previous module, but we'll be going over some of the same concepts all throughout the curriculum. So this is the data pane. We're going to drag orders over, or we can double click it. But we get our little sample set at the bottom. And because this data set doesn't really need any cleaning or filtering or anything, and the purpose for this is really just charting, we're going to go straight to our worksheet. So for our first chart, we're going to want to create a standard bar chart. So in all of these charts, we're going to use a variation of sales by category. So our measure is always going to be sales, and our dimension will always be category, and in a few of these we'll have some order dates. But let's go ahead and double click category, and Tableau automatically throws it onto the row shelf. If we wanted it on the columns, we can do that too. But for right now, rows is fine. So if we double click sales though, it's going to automatically put it in our marks card, which is great for a pivot table. But what we want is we want it on our columns. So let's go ahead and drag it out of the marks and put it on our columns. This is great. This is a standard bar chart. If we want the values at the end of the bars, we can do that by either selecting this button at the top that says Show Mark Labels, or we can drag the measure back to that marks card for the label. We can see here that the label is actually just an integer, and we know that sales is a currency. So for the entirety of this dashboard, sales will always be a currency, and it should be formatted all across the dashboard the same way. So I want to format it from the Measures pane. If I formatted it from this view, it would only format for that view, not for the entire dashboard or workbook. So I'm going to do it from this Measures pane. So right click and select Format, or go to Default Properties and Number Format. And then you can either format this as a currency standard, which would give you those 2 decimal places afterwards, so you really get an absolute value, or you can format it with a custom formatting for currency. So go to number format again, currency custom, and I don't need the 2 decimal places since these values are already so large. I can do that. Or if I wanted to, I can even make those formatted shorter. So it would be 742K and 719K. You do that by going back up and saying display units and selecting what display unit you'd like. But we don't need that. So I'm going to hit this back button. And this is our bar chart. Excuse me. If we wanted things on the color shelf, like if we wanted region on the color shelf, we can drag that up. But that gives us the values in each color. And that's fine, but that's not what's called for here. So let's go ahead and we can rename the sheet to bar, and let's make our pie chart. A pie chart is not as easy as you think it would be. It starts by selecting your mark. So you want your mark to be a pie. You can also see how to do these in each. You can select the Show Me, and it'll tell you what you need on the view. So if you go over here, it'll say that you need 1 dimension or 1 or 2 measures. So let's go ahead and change it back to automatic, and let's do this through the Show Me. So we want category and we want sales, the same way we did that bar. Now let's select the pie. And that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Sometimes if you have a lot of things on the shelf, you call these shelves, when you select the Show Me view, it can give you unexpected results. So it's always good to know how to create them outside of the Show Me pane as well. So we'll go through that here too. So we know we want category to be the color. So when you do that, it just pulls over the three colors because you only have 3 categories. You want sales to be the size of things. So now you have just a huge tree map. If you go up here, you can see that. It's called a tree map here. But what we are going for right now is a pie chart. So I can change my mark to pie. And so it gives me each wedge or the size of things on the sales. We could drag sales up too to angle, but at this point it doesn't really do anything. If we wanted those views, we can hit this and that would give us our values. If we don't want to bring our legend onto the dashboard, we can also put the names of the categories. We would do that by clicking category or dragging category onto the label shelf, and that replaces the sales. And then you have to drag the label sales up to the label as well, and that brings sales. You can format this by clicking the labels. It's saying show mark label, and a good practice is always to make your numbers the visible object. So that should be a little bit larger, maybe in bolded. And you can make your category a little, not less visible, but a little less distracting, because the main focus is on the numbers here. So this is your pie chart. So I renamed that pie. So let's add the pivot table. So we can duplicate this and see what it does to hit Show Me. And your pivot table is called a text table in Tableau. So hit text table, and it actually looks exactly the way you want it, but you want to know this by years, by order year specifically. So drag order date onto the column. We can leave this heading here if we don't want to. We can hide that filled heading. The same way we know that that's category. If we want to have a total on this sheet, we can do that by going to Analysis, Totals, or we can show the row grand total, which will give us everything for furniture, and the column grand total, which will give us everything for that year. If we wanted to reformat this sheet, we can. If we want to reformat the dimensions or the category, you can either click it here or you can click it on the pill itself. So right click Format, and you see that your format is for category. You can make that a little larger, make that a little lighter. You can format the grand totals itself, which is very desirable, because otherwise it really does look like just another category. So let's change the name from grand total to total. Let's format that so it's right aligned, and let's make that regular and bolded so it can be a little different. From here you can also format the colors. So if I wanted to take the row banding off of this but leave the grand total on, when you format a header, it only formats the name of the field. Format the pane, it formats the rest. So now my categories is formatted a little different than my grand total. And I want to take my lines off, because the lines right now are a little distracting. So take my row divider off, and you can do it. You can also do it at the grand total level if you want to, but it doesn't really matter because you've got that shading. So let's make this, the name is not bold, so let's draw that focus to the value. And say with this, you've got all the value. By the way, when I'm hovering, I see this big thing keeps popping up. So let's take the tooltips off, because you don't need any further detail than what you're viewing on the view. So if we click tooltip, every time you put a pill or a category, a filter on the dashboard, it puts it in the tooltip. So what we can do is either clear out the tooltip, which is you don't need to do, or you could just right click or just click show tooltips and unselect it. So now we don't have anything that pops up. We don't need to, and nothing is disturbing our view. So let's make the numbers a little larger. We can either do like we did before and format it from here, or we can actually, since we have formatting all the way up already up, we can select it here. Format sum of sales. I want that to be a little larger and even bold, like semi-bold. Boom. That's nice. That's different. So let's change this total, this grand total heading. And because this is, one is on the rows and one is on the columns, you can't format them both at the same time. You have down here, you've called this total, but let's call that total as well. And because of where it's at, we can actually format that differently. We can even format that to come up at the top of the box if the box was very large. Format the name to be a different size, and now you have your pivot table. So if I right click down here and rename this pivot, now I've got a bar chart, a pie chart, and a pivot chart, a pivot table. So the next is the line graph. A line graph is best done on a date basis, on a continuous date basis, because what you really are trying to see is the growth and trending of something over a period of time. So a line graph is not something that you would look at just sales by category. You have to have a date field in. So at this, you want to know the order date. So I'm going to drag order date over to columns, and I'm going to drag my measure that I want is sales. We'll put that on the row, and so that automatically gives me a line graph. So now what I want, though, is I want different lines for each category. I drag my category onto the color, and that gives me a line per category. So now if I wanted to, I can make this fit entire view. I can also change the way this looks. Because this is a blue pill, this is discrete. So this is acting kind of like a category. But to make it continuous, I would select the secondary year filter. Select that, and it takes up the whole view. And now when I drill into it, it changes just like that. In the previous way, if we go back to discrete and drill, it treats it like another category, and it breaks it up, and you see all of the fields at once. So if I wanted to look at quarter by year, then I can drag them and look at it a little differently, but this is not what I want. I want that continuous year growth. It might be more beneficial to see it at a more granular level, so let's bring it down to month. That looks a little crazy. You kind of have to play with this view. So I'm going to go back to year. So you can change the axis that you're looking at by hitting Edit Axis. And I don't want it to say year of order date. I think that that's a little redundant. So I deleted that, and you can just X out of it and it will delete it. If you hover here, you can actually drill down there yourself. Then the user will be able to do that too if they needed that data. Or you could have seen all values. Where did it go? That little box that I just had. Anywho, so if you wanted to see the values at each level, you could hit your mark and do that. Or what I would probably do is put this in a vertical container over the pivot table. So you would be able to always equate and it wouldn't be so busy. So what we can do now, we're going to rename this line graph. And I like these values, but I only want to see them if I've selected something. So I'm going to click on my label, and I'm going to say show mark label at when they're selected. So now when I select something, I see the label. And I can even add in, I can do it so it says category and the sum of sales if I want to, by doing it the same way we did with the other sheet. So I can format this. So now when I click it, it says office supplies and the amount. So that's a good line graph. It's a very basic line graph. I want to format my years so they're a little bit bigger. So I can do that and format them at like 11 or something. And so now I've got my line graph. This is the way I want to view it. You can even add names or shapes, or you can change the colors. You can add markers. You can make the colors a little different. And you can even, I didn't go over this previously, but you can edit the colors directly from any of these, and it will format it across all. So let's go ahead and cancel out that, because the colors are fine. And when you're designing something, you really do need to keep in mind for the colorblind and all of that, but that's a separate discussion. So let's go ahead and create your map. If you select your new sheet, the great thing, you remember when we were looking at the data source, we did not do anything to it. We did not say what was a city or state or whatever geographic field it was. But in this instance, what I want is by the state. So if I double click state, you can see that Tableau automatically makes a map. It does that for any of these. So if you double clicked postal code, it'll do the same thing. And double click city, it'll do the same thing. But what you'll see here is now you have less dots, because when you think about it, a postal code is the most granular thing, but a city, there can be several states with that city. So you need to tell Tableau how to map that. Now, if we put state on the view too, now that's gone away. Now it knows how to map everything. But what we can do, if we don't have state available in the view, is to select this little pill down here at the bottom. This is how many unknown, and say edit locations. Now if you're just in the state of Tennessee or in one particular state, you can change that state by saying fixed here. But since we do have the field state, we can select that right here. Right here it's asking me, it's saying that we're getting, the country is from the United States. It's fixing that. But we can change that to get from country. The state it's getting from the field state, and the city from the field city. So now you see that you've actually mapped out everything. So hit OK, and now you see your view again. But what it's done is it put state back on the view and put country on the view, which is fine. So for this view, what we wanted was to see all of our categories with our sales by zip code. So put your category back on the color shelf and put your sales on the size marks card. And what that gives you is the amount of sales that you have. You can tell the larger the dot, the more sales you have. And your values go from 1 to 51,000. So you can select any of these and it'll highlight on the sheet. If you go up here, and it's supposed to let me highlight, but I can do it here. So now that's all office supplies and furniture and technology. I can't believe that doesn't work. Anywho, so now I've got my views done. This is just my basic views. There's so many other things that we can do to make this dashboard better, but we just want to know how to get something out there to start. So we're going to rename this map, and we're going to start to put them on a dashboard. So we want our bar chart to be beside our pie chart. I'm not going to put any containers out there for now, but I want my pivot table to be, I'm just dragging it underneath bar and pie. And then I want my line chart under pivot table, and I want my map beside it. I don't need this, so we can delete it. And so now I can kind of finagle the sizes of these items. So if I wanted to stretch this across, I can say fit entire view, because this will never get any larger. I can do the same thing to this entire view. I can do that to everything in this view. But if something can get larger, if you're going to have the likelihood of having 15 categories, the next time you look at this, you'll want to change that to something like fit to width, because fit entire view will really scrunch this up. And we're going to do the same thing in the map. Well, in the map, you can't actually change that to fit entire view. It's going to show you the full thing, and you're going to have this little map bar. It's called your map options, and your search bar, your pan and zoom, and your view toolbar. This is called your view toolbar. So we can hide these titles. And now we know how to create each one of these views and a little bit of how to put them on a dashboard. In a subsequent module, we'll talk about how to make these more actionable and how to create more meaningful views and actions from these. Thank you for watching.